Hello, what is up? So, this video is going to be about sharpness on the DLSS and FSR4, or in general on FSR actually. So this is my true experience of how I've seen it on NVIDIA. So what I've noticed is I'm starting to think that DLSS needs to be more blurry in order for it to work like how NVIDIA want it to work. So if it's too sharp, even just a bit overly sharp, it will look terrible. Because I do remember in this game, I remember playing this, and I was on the 4090, and I loaded it up. I selected DLSS because that's what you meant to do all the time, usually on Nvidia, and it looked pretty bad with the AA, the aliasing, because it had some sort of green tint over the all over the wall and all that, all on the objects as you're walking past, and it just didn't look good. And then the fix was to actually turn all the sharpness down to naught. So I thought that's interesting. So the default sharpness was like it obviously couldn't deal SS3, and this is what I've been saying. It needs to be more blurred in order for it to work. And yeah, when I tried FSR on this game, it looked better from the actual default sharpness. So that I found that interesting, and I'll pick up on stuff like that. So the other thing I've talked about in my previous videos was this game, that and to an extent with a rebirth as well with the hair. So DLSS looks bad on this with the hair quality. It looks pixelated with the hair when you're using DLSS 4, I found. And with this one, it looked way too blurry, DLSS. And the sharpness meter on this was totally greyed out, so you couldn't adjust it. So what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of people just turning up the sharpness of it, and you only got to go back to this game, The Last of Us, in my video about pretty much the sharpness of that, where people saying it was too overly sharp. So we can load this up. So it seems to be everything's all is starting to add up to why they made DLSS 3 more blurry, because they literally, as we saw in Frog's video and the one I did about the first blur video I did, basically it's showing up the faults of DLSS, that the tolerance for their sharpness in the image ain't as good as FSR4 I'm talking about now. So it seems to me FSR4 has a higher tolerance for sharpness than DLSS does, because it can obviously, the default sharpness was 0 for FSR4, and it was the same for DLSS 3 and 4. So, and FSR4 is natively in the game. So I know some people will disagree, but for me it is, because if you literally load this launcher up, you can clearly see once you activate it in Adrenaline, it literally comes up FSR4. So the writing's literally there in front of you. So if it's not natively in the game, I'm not sure what you're looking at. So anyway, what I was talking about was so there was a fix. Where was that fix? Yeah. So the upscale sharpness now gives improved control over sharpening. What they mean by that is they've made it more blurry at 0. So at 0, it was too overly sharp for Nvidia, and this is what I'm saying, because their algorithm, their technology can't really hack it when it's sharper. That's what I find, and this explains to me why. Because as I've said before, they work on a more blurry technique, a more blurry aliasing, so they need to blur everything for their technology to look visually playable. And that's what I didn't like on NVIDIA, because I found a lot of games are too blurry. And it brings me back to my point about this game where it was too blurry for me, even when I updated it, because they literally wouldn't let me change the sharpness. I wish I had a video. I think I might have a video actually of this to prove my point. It might be in here. I mean, did I do a benchmark? Yeah, yeah. So I've done a benchmark. This is DLSS 3, but I did a. I'm pretty sure I updated that to the DLSS 4 through the NVIDIA app. I'm sure I definitely did 100%. I'm not. Anyway, we don't need to. So this is what's this? I'll do it in video. I don't know why that stupid player does it. They want you to pay that just to get the image from the file. That's it. So we just turn this down. So this is on the 4090, as you can see. Oh yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. So if you got this game, that is on NVIDIA, you cannot alter that sharpness, so it's just fucking blurry, and that's what I didn't like. So the only option, and I tried to do it outside the app, and it just wouldn't do it. I couldn't get it to my liking. Yet on FSR, you can actually change the sharpness. So what are they afraid of? Because I think it's because with their technology, as I said, it doesn't work how it doesn't look good if it's just a bit sharper. And as we've seen in The Last of Us Part 2, it looks bloody so shimmery. It's not got a tolerance for being sharper. So I found that quite interesting. And we can load it up if you don't believe me. So I'll load the game up. So that's blanked out on NVIDIA, that sharpness meter. So we load this up, and to get FSR 4 on this game, I like to use the FSR inputs anyway. Alright. That's taking longer than usual, that. Anyway, you see once that loads up, I can actually change the sharpness of that. If Steam decides to work. That is taking way longer than it should be, that. Oh, let's stop that and try it again. Typical, isn't it? You make a video, then that don't work. And it literally 99% of the time will just start up. Anyway, you can literally see on my videos, if you want to check this out for yourself, I've got a Final Fantasy 16 video. I might just verify the files, I don't know what they've done with it. I didn't see any updates. But you can check this out for yourself on FSR. You can literally edit the sharpness. So it did start to wonder, well, it made me wonder what they're worried about. So I think this is why, well, pretty much, because I've seen it for myself, that I do prefer the sharpness of a FSR, because they just tend to rely way more on the more blurry technique, and that's what I didn't like. Especially if you're playing at 1440p, you'll notice it even more on NVIDIA where it's more blurry. But maybe that is why on the FSR 3 it was more pixelated, because they're trying to maintain that sharpness, but that the actual technology, the upscaling technology, just weren't good enough. But on the FSR 4, it's so much better with that AI that it can actually maintain that sharpness and it don't look pixelated anymore. So, as I say, it just shows like AMD do the stuff I want in the game. That's literally what it feels like to me. But I've noticed that in a few games where you can't edit that sharpness meter. It did make me wonder why. Maybe it was broken at launch and they've just greyed it out on that. So I thought that was quite interesting, really. That you literally can't do it. Uh, I'll wait for this. I mean, hopefully it does load up. There shouldn't be any issues with it. Yeah, the optiscaler was working pretty fine on it. So, what else we got? It's because I haven't got my NVIDIA GPU in. It's obviously harder for me to show it. But as I said, you can check. I mean, definitely that is something I've noticed. That as I said in this game, I had to play with a more blurry image just because it looked so bloody bad on NVIDIA. If it was you had to turn the sharpness down from the default for it to look good, and FSR, I just didn't like the blur on this. I mean, so maybe that's why DLSS 4. I mean, obviously that's not natively in the game in here, DLSS 4, because it doesn't actually come up in the game menu. And I actually think is there like Cyberpunk? I think DLSS 4 comes up in the menu with a transformer. I think that might control. I can't think of many games where that is, and I mean, for me, if this is coming up in the menu, I mean, surely that is more natively in the game, because if you look at, I've uninstalled Spider-Man because I like to make some space, but I mean, we can have a look at this one. Might as well talk about, because I was mainly going to talk about sharpness, but for me, usually if something's not natively in the game supported, it wouldn't even come up in the menu. That would do in the shaders. Oh, well, I was playing The Last of Us Part 2 the other night, working completely fine, but I think Steam does have these silly issues at times. I mean, I remember installing God of War, and for some reason it was taking so long compared to all my other installs. And then I looked that up on Reddit, and then they said, there's an issue with God of War when you literally installing the game, it takes longer than it should. So Steam do have some issues with stuff like that. Anyway, that won't take too long. Alright. Yeah, so if that is, I mean, it's coming up AMD FSR 4, so on this, I actually, because all OptiScaler does, it just updates the AMD files to 3.1, then you can use that. And then, so at the end of the day, for me, that's all it's doing. And so the only difference when you think about it, so when you're using this DLSS swapper on NVIDIA, I was having to update the files to 4. So that's a new one there. So they've obviously updated it again. So all this does is literally do what the NVIDIA app does. It replaces the files. So that's all it does. So you just literally, where is it? it's this one because I think that's frame generation, I think. So that's yeah, that is the DLSS file. So that's all it does is update the files, really. That's the latest one there. So that's the one in the game. So all you're doing with Optiscaler is you're doing the same thing. You're just overwriting the FSR file in the game, and then that's it. So at the end of the day, all NVIDIA have done is do the same thing. They've just made it sort of a easier way. Well, the NVIDIA app ain't even working properly, so I've heard that it's not working that great anyway. So a lot of people are having to use this NVIDIA profile inspector, which is pretty much the same thing. It's probably not going to load up on there, will it? Let me have a look. Nah, because it's not detecting the NVIDIA GPU, but all that does is the same thing. It's modding. At the end of the day, modding is modding for me. It's doing the same thing. It's modding the game files so you can use the latest technology. So to me, it's not that complicated. So you got 3.7 there, so that's not got the latest version. So people would just go in there, update that. So with Optiscaler, it's just a different way of doing it, where you just put the files in, overwrite the game files to update the files. That's all you're doing. So that's the way I started thinking about it. Because at the start, when I got the 9070 XL, I thought, well, not everyone is able to do it. But at the end of the day, when I was thinking more on Nvidia, I was having to do the same thing because a lot of the games had DLSS 2, like Dying Light and all that had DLSS 2. So probably AMD have looked at it and they thought, well, if people do it on Nvidia, then they'll do it on AMD because there is tons and tons of information there out on the internet how to update files, and it's not that once you learn how to do it, it's easy. So yeah, I do think at the end of the day, it gets you using FSR4 rather than waiting for it. So for me, if I've bought the card, I'm just going to use it because I'm not going to wait for it. Because there's a lot of games where I'm thinking it might not even come to, and that was the same on Nvidia. There's a lot of games where I wanted to use because I didn't like, as I said, I didn't like the more blurry DLSS 2, and then I wanted to use the updated version because it was better than the older DLSS 2 and all that. Because it was just so I think at the end of the day, it's as I said, it's essentially the same thing, and at least FSR4 comes up in the menu. Right, let's see if this fucking game goes up now. I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, maybe did I uninstall it? Right. That is annoying when that stupid thing comes up. Right. Alright, so don't use DLSS on this. All I can think is maybe a file with the shaders or something has been corrupted on the game, because all my other games have been working. So if not, if you want to have a look for this yourself, because I don't know what's going on with it, check one of my videos and you see on FSR that you can actually have sharpness set to 10 and all that. So you can definitely change it on that. Ah, is it? That's decided to work now, right? Thank fuck for that. Not sure why that weren't loading up. So yeah, so there you go. See, I remember having, because that can be overly sharp, but it's only a little bit. So it's got a higher tolerance for sharpness, FSR. So we can put this on. Alright, so we save that. I've only had to turn it down by 3. And I think this is what I mean. If a DLSS 3 or 4, if that's on level 7 sharpness, then that would look pretty bad. Because that's what I've seen in quite a few games. You get a green tint where it just really runs with the aliasing. And that was a problem where it's like you have to put up with more blurry sort of aliasing rather than get that sharper image. So I mean, what we can do is actually turn that sharpness, because I'm pretty sure this is what NVIDIA's is on.
Help tidying up that workshop.
Think Mid might need well-meaning souls to leave her alone.
Yeah, so that is a lot more bloody blurry now, because I've literally turned the sharpness down to 0. And I really don't like that, because it's like the hair blends into the face. Oh fuck, I really don't like that fucking blurry image. I really hate it. It's like you losing resolution. It just gets rid of all the detail. So that literally reminds me more of what DLSS looks like. Now that looks much better. Yeah. See, it pops out more. See, this is what I mean. This is exactly. So that's all I can think, that if on DLSS the like FSR's got a higher threshold for sharpness, but DLSS 3 relies more on the blurry technique. So I think that's quite interesting, really. I really do, because that's exactly what I was saying. But for some reason on Rebirth, it's like the rest of the image, apart from the hair quality, was blurry, but the hair, it's like they forgot to make the sharpness of the hair more blurry for it to look good. So that's what I think's happened on that game. Anyway, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. So yeah, I think that is I mean, if you didn't think of this already, maybe I've sort of opened your eyes up to something. But for me, I do think, as I said, they've just relied more on the blurry technique and video. Otherwise, it looks terrible, because as we saw with Joe's hair shimmering in The Last of Us, on one of my the first blur video I've done with Ellie, you can watch that. And so it seems like, and even Nixus, they've had to alter the sharpness meter, which made FSR more blurry when it was actually looking fine to me. So I think FSR 4 has a higher tolerance. It can be sharper more than DLSS can. Anyway, that is it for me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.